Hello, everyone, and welcome to our what we hope is the first of many writing workshops for the Creativity Studies and Change Leadership department. Our goal, our plan is to hold at least one of these per year because we have new students all the time. I am joined by my distinguished colleague, and Molly, I'm going to spotlight you. There
Good
we
evening,
go.
everybody.
And okay, there we are. So that way, if more people come in and the thing keeps shifting around, you should be able, no matter what view of Zoom you're in, right? You have all those different views. I always make sure my view is a gallery view. And then I just reposition the gallery with whatever I'm sharing, right, with your screen. Well, welcome to our writing workshop. We're holding this because writing well is a part of what it means to be highly educated. And my guess is all of you at one point or another have written for at least classes, either as an undergraduate or as a graduate student. And certainly if you go on like my UVI students to pursue your doctorate, and as you know, the Creativity Studies department, our department, is beginning its own doctorate, we hope next year, if it gets through all the approval levels, where you'll do even more writing. And writing now has all kinds of different styles to it, right? You write one way for text messages, you write a different way for email, you write a different way if you're on a website, if you're writing an essay or creative writing. And tonight our focus is what we call academic or scholarly writing, that you would do if you were submitting a paper for a class, or better yet, a paper for a journal to get published. Now, we're going to make this a working workshop, like we said, but you'll retain your access to the Google Doc that we have put in the chat. Now, I need you to put your hand up if you didn't, if you just joined us. And okay, all right, so Molly's been putting it into the chat. Okay, so Dee, click on the link that Dr. Hollinger just put into the chat, and that will open our working Google Doc, which you can see in my share window in Zoom, but then also open another tab in Chrome with a blank Google Doc in it, so you can do your practicing there. And then, as I have said now several times, what we're going to do is ask the first 2 or 3 of you who revise the writing we give you that's going to have different kinds of weaknesses or errors in it. And we're going to ask the first 2 or 3 of you who are comfortable with sharing your revision to copy it from your Google Doc and put it here in ours. And then, as I said, you're going to be able to retain your access to this Google Doc. It has all kinds of resources in it. Now, if you've not already done so, over on the left, make sure you open the outline for this Google Doc. If you don't see the outline, and you can see it, you know, I was just sharing it, right, in Zoom, in the upper left-hand corner, it looks like a little bulleted list icon below the Google toolbar. And if you click on that icon, you'll see the outline. And we're going to talk a little more later about why it's so important when you create documents in Google that you use their formatting pane for the different headings in your document, because when you do that, Google automatically generates a table of contents for you. So you can then jump right to different parts in the document. And when we talk about headings, we'll share with you how you do that in Google and also how you do that in Word. Okay, so as those of you who've had me know, I like to start with a thermometer test, if you would, of emotions. So we are going to menti.com, MENTI.com. And Molly and I have a word cloud activity. And our question is, and I'll go right to it so you can see, right? Our question is, what keeps you up at night emotionally, right, when you have to complete a writing assignment? And let's not just be negative, all right, and list all those fears and anxieties, because writing can be a positive thing too. It really can, and hopefully we make it a positive activity in our courses. So when you go to menti.com, let me put into the chat the number. You can see it on the screen, but just in case it isn't really large enough for you, when you go to menti.com, you're going to enter the code 19013689. So 19013689. And then that will give you the opportunity to then enter 2 or 3 emotions that keep you up at night, positively or negatively, when you have to complete a writing assignment.
Dr. Yates, this is Ardrina.
Ardrina?
Yeah, my question says, what skills do you believe teachers and trainers need to be effective?
Me too.
Uh-oh, I wonder why. All right, see if it, because I just read the, let me make sure I put the right code there. I thought I did, but let's check.
It's changed now. It changed now.
Did it just change? Okay, there you go. Now you see what keeps you up at night.
Can you give me the code number? I went back.
Yeah, 1901.
Refresh.
3689. So 1901 3689. And you can see the word cloud changing as people enter their responses.
Got some perfectionists in the room. No surprise there.
Exactly. And now please enter your own emotions. Yeah.
Having snacks.
Yeah, we've got being focused, insecurity. Look at all these different phrases, huh? Unique ideas, having snacks. Love that. Yeah.
Reference page. Yep, that's a killer.
It is. And of course, scholarly reference pages and citations are definitely one of the biggest challenges. So that's why we have a whole section of our Google Doc devoted to that. Annoying, someone has, at least one person. Intense focus. Self-doubt. Music, interesting. Somebody says, I love this, Ma. You see this? I sleep at night. So we should have said what keeps you up whenever, right? Instead of at night. I love it. I have a guess as to who put that, but I'm not gonna say. Some of you have bigger senses of humor than others. At least it's been my experience. Lies, all lies. Oh goodness! Did you just see the God help me right here? All right, I got this. Excitement. Of course, the due date. All right. Well, thank you very much. Hopefully, Molly and I are going to help you with the negative emotions and by sharing with you techniques that we use and skills and examples. So
Yeah, so you'll see also in the Google Doc we have some SLOs, if you if you will, which you can look through. They're a little bit more of a formal takeaways of what we would like you to get out of the evening. But in general, what we want you to walk away with is feeling a little bit more comfortable about academic writing. And so often it's just assumed that somehow along your education you'll just pick it up. At least that's what I experienced. And I think, and David thinks this as well, that there's a better way to do it, and teach you some deliberate strategies, give you some resources, and hopefully help you along that path of becoming scholarly writers, rather than just assuming that you'll pick it up from various places along your educational journey. So we're going to talk about what is good scholarly writing, what is good writing in general, address those APA formatting nightmares, and also give you some resources that we use a lot that will hopefully become staples for you all as well.
Molly, would you be so kind to go through our objectives with them? Share your screen, and
Sure.
if you can, yeah, thank you.
Could you share your screen, David? And
Oh, am I still? Oh, you want me to share my screen instead? Okay, give me
that'd be great.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Unfortunately, when I closed, I thought I was just getting rid of Menti, but my whole Google Doc window has run off somewhere. So let me get back there.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, we want to talk about what's different about scholarly writing versus good writing in general. Right, so if you're thinking about writing, a memoir or a novel, those tips and that style is going to be very different from scholarly writing. Then we're going to talk about things that are more general style tips. So things like conciseness, having how much complexity do we have in sentences, eliminating things like slang, emotional language, jargon. We'll get into all of that. Again, thinking about how much complexity do we want in our sentences, getting into some of the grammar pitfalls, which I'm sure we all learned in middle school, but have since maybe forgotten a few of those things. And then David's really going to hit upon how new tools like AI can be used in a constructive way, and the pitfalls that you want to avoid with those. Then we'll get into some APA specific stuff. Look at citations, passive versus a present voice, and then finally look at formatting, and then give you some tools to walk away with.
Okay, thank you. My Google window has returned. So that's good.
Did you warm it up?
Yep. Okay, so let me switch over to this window. There we go. All right, so there's again Molly went through our objectives. Thank you. Understand that there's no way in 2 hours that we could cover not only just everything has to do with APA, but of course, writing. So that's why you're being given this document, which is going to have resources you can access forever, hopefully, to get to the things that we don't have time tonight. This is our first effort to hold this workshop. And all of you who are teachers know that it's not the first time we've taught writing, it's the first time we've taught this workshop. And it's hard to gauge sometimes, right? How long each things take. All right, so part one, and once again, over on the left, Molly, could you put, I think I saw in chat, somebody maybe just came in and they need the link to the Google Doc.
Oh, sure thing.
Okay. Unfortunately, as you all know, with Zoom, when you come into a session, anything that was put into the chat before you got there, you can't see. So that's why we put it in there repeatedly. Again, if you're just coming in, access the document that Molly has put the link to in the chat, but also open up a second tab with a blank Google Doc that you'll use for practicing. All right, the first thing that we want to talk about tonight is the difference between what we call academic or scholarly writing and other forms of writing. As I said in the intro, we have all kinds of different situations that demand different writing styles from us. We should not write the same way when we're writing a thank you note or a birthday card or a text message. Or an email that we do when we're writing for a paper. I've never sent anybody a birthday card that had references. Molly, have you? Or citations? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. Have a wonderful time, according to Puccio, 2010. Yeah, somehow it doesn't
I did
get
see
it.
a wedding invitation that was like a mock academic wedding invitation, which was I thought kind of clever.
I would love to see that,
but I didn't go that route. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might start doing that now.
Oh, there you go. Start putting references and citations in your text, whatever you do, right? Okay, so first of all, academic writing uses a more formal tone, right? And avoids colloquialisms and slang that are very common in everyday speech. So whereas in informal writing, you might say, boy, kids these days or kids today, they watch a lot of television, right? Or a lot of TV even, since that's an abbreviation. Right? An academic paper would not use the word kids. It would use children or adolescents, right? And as we'll talk about, it would be a lot more specific as well, okay? Molly, how about use of evidence?
Yeah, so this is where you want to cite specific studies, be very descriptive or specific in describing the findings of the study. So instead of just saying like children watch too much TV, putting the citation and saying recent studies have shown that screen time can affect children's cognitive development.
Yeah, and this is probably the greatest or the most important distinguishing characteristic of academic writing, because unless you're in the conclusion section, where you are certainly encouraged to cite your own opinions, in academic writing, everything you state that is not common knowledge, like Columbus discovered America or the sky is blue, that's what we mean by common knowledge, you need to have a reference for it. And so that is far and away the most common mistake that my students make when they write their first paper for me. If they've never written an academic paper before, they will interweave their opinions all throughout the paper. So yes, you are allowed to have your own opinions, but in academic writing, unless you're in that conclusion section, and in some cases in the introductory section, everything you state, like this is a good example. Recent studies have shown that screen time can affect children's cognitive development. You'd absolutely you'd need a citation there for it, a source that you got this information, whether it's a fact or it could be somebody's opinion. You need to do that. So be very careful as you write that you cite. Okay. The next thing up is objectivity, and our language, like most languages in the world, is full of all kinds of emotional phrases, right? So somebody might say, "I can't believe how much TV kids watch." Well, that's emotional language. It really is, right? It suggests they think they watch too much, right? So it's an opinion and it's also emotional. In academic writing, you would say this research explored the impact of screen time on children. So you try to stay away from emotions and especially emotional language. Okay, Molly, how about specialized terminology?
Yeah, so you are all well aware that in our field we have very specific language, and it's really important to use the language that researchers use. So, rather than saying something like thinking, you would use cognition, right? Or neuroplasticity is another great example. So we have a specific terminology for good reason, because the differences in terms are, for example, when we're talking about problem finding, there are different terms for that, like problem identification, problem construction. And so really being aware of the terms you're using and what they mean specifically, and differentiating between those terms is really important.
I apologize to you for not making this bigger earlier. Joe, did you have a question or?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah. It's more about the format of this workshop, or perhaps what I intend to find out. I'm wondering if I could hear about as we're the different sections of the paper that we're writing, what the overall objective is between giving my own observations as opposed to citing other people's as opposed to citing references. You know what I mean? So you can say something like, in this section, you're going to give maybe some note of your opinion, but then bring in references. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you'll need to check
So
with an individual teacher, Joe, for something like the answer to that kind of question. In general, in academic writing, your opinions are relegated to your conclusions.
conclusion. Gotcha.
Okay,
Okay.
to the conclusion
Good.
section. In the rest
Yeah,
of it, yeah, Molly?
I think it's really going to depend on, the assignment that you're doing. So, if you're writing something like your master's project, for example, one section might be focused on the literature review, but then you make it clear in another section that these are like new connections that you are making, they're theoretical connections. And so, yeah, it's really going to depend on the nature of the assignment that you're working on in your audience.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
always a
Okay,
good
thanks.
idea to ask your instructor about that,
well,
because instructors, we vary in the directions, that we give. So what we're pointing out in our workshop are the general guidelines for writing academic papers, or what
gotcha.
we also call scholarly papers. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
All
Thanks.
right. You're welcome. All right. The next bullet point in our guide is that academic writing often uses more complex sentences, but not overly complex. And we're going to talk a little bit later about making your writing so complex that people have a real hard time following your thoughts. But what you want to stay away from are those really short sentences and acronyms like LOL, BFF, my sons, right? Again, we go back to the differences in writing opportunities, if you would. All right, Molly, contractions.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. You want to avoid contractions in your writing. That is frowned upon. So no contractions, write them out. I could do the next one too if you want, David.
Sure.
So the next one is avoidance of slang and colloquialisms. So I love these examples David's put in here. So the data is as clear as the water in a mountain stream. That sounds very lovely and poetic, but that's not really the style for academic writing. So it is evident from the data would be more acceptable for an academic paper.
Yeah, and that really leads us into examples of informal, and that's what we call the use of slang and colloquialisms, very common in informal writing. We use them all the time. Our language is extremely colorful. I have a book just on English idioms. I mean, it's a full book and it's unbelievable. And like I said before, I feel so sorry for people learning English as a second language, right? Because they can learn what the word bucket means and they can learn what the word kick means. And then they look at you when you say, "Oh, my uncle kicked the bucket last week." Well, why did he do that, right? And you meant, obviously, the colloquialism is he died, okay? So you can see these examples, right? And so we're not going to go through all these, but we've given you several examples here of the kinds of phrases that we might use in informal writing and the way an academic writer would say the same thing. And an academic writer avoids...
And I will add, I think one common complaint about academic writing is everybody says, "Oh, it's so dry, it's so boring," right? And to an extent, that's true. I think some really good examples, if you're looking for a model for someone who conforms to the academic writing standards, but is also, I think, does so in an interesting, more maybe readable, more refreshing way, would be Paul Sylvia. And I'll talk a little bit more about him later, and also James Kaufman. So I'll put both of those names in the chat. But those are two people who I'd say if you're looking for someone who's, maybe not quite as dry as most academic writing, those are some good people to look up.
Okay, so once again, we've given you all kinds of examples here that you can read. I'm going to jump down to page 6, where we talk about the person that academic writing uses. Person meaning pronoun use, right? In academic writing, normally you stay with a third-person perspective. You avoid, again, except for, you'll see it in the conclusion section. You'll say we, and maybe sometimes in the introductory section, but within the body of the academic paper, you avoid addressing the reader. You really need to do the X, right? Or I, using instead, like one might argue, although clearly, we use I and we and you all the time in our other kinds of writing. So normally stay away from first person or second person and stick with the third person, right? Now, the tense can be a little bit tricky, and it catches up verb tense. catches a lot of people in academic writing, unfortunately, because what APA says, and remember, that's the style we use in our department. Other disciplines use other writing styles, including MLA, right, the Modern Library Association, or Chicago or Turabian. When you share research that occurred prior to your writing, which you do most of the time, then you use a past tense. So Puccio, 2010, found that creative problem-solving training. But when you describe the results, now you move to the present tense. These results suggest, because if you stay with the past tense, it sounds like it's no longer true, right? These results suggested that sounds like it's no longer true. So when you say they researched, they studied, they found, that's all past tense. But when you share the results of your study or someone else's, you make that a present tense. And our example here is really good. These results suggest that creative problem solving training improves divergent. All right, Molly, you want to talk about precision in academic writing? You really already alluded to it.
Yeah, we did touch upon that. And also just adding to the present tense versus past tense. Another rule of thumb or way you can gauge it sometimes is whether you're talking about like a larger body of research. So like several studies are taking into account all of these studies suggests. So again, that's going to be present. And then, so moving on to precision in language, I think what I would stress is being very specific about describing results, especially. So an example from like the creativity field, you could say, there was a study where, or in Puccio 2022, they found that creativity improved creative solutions, but a more specific, precise way of presenting the information would be, creativity training improved divergent thinking specifically, right? So divergent thinking does not equate to creativity. So being very, very specific in terms of what, how you're translating the results is going to be really important. And you'll find in like, popular press articles how quickly things get generalized, right? And so oftentimes popular press articles will generalize or sort of exaggerate the findings. And so in academic writing, you really want to avoid that and be very specific in terms of how you translate the findings of a study.
Yeah, and the use of numbers, for instance, or as Molly said, specific terms for things in whatever discipline that you're in, rather than general terms, right? All right. Academic writing, definitely, we've already said this, right? It cites the sources of all information not believed to be common knowledge, whereas on websites and other places, you can get some experts believe that where you live can affect your health. Okay, you would not want to put that in an academic paper of any kind, because you'd want to identify, you could say this, but then after it, you'd want your citation. Where did this come from? Who are these experts? And the reason we cite is so anybody reading your study can go and look at that information and perhaps draw their own conclusions from it, right? Rather than just taking people's word for it. Molly mentioned specificity. Well, academic writing avoids the opposite of being specific is being ambiguous, right? With phrases like, a lot of people felt better after trying that thing. Yeah, you would never write something like that in academic writing. You'd want to be very specific, if possible, with numbers like 42%, but also in whatever it is you're reporting, right? A decrease in symptoms after the intervention. Very specific, as opposed to trying that thing. Goodness, right? What does that mean? And then, Molly, you want to talk about absence of personal anecdotes?
Um, yeah, so in general, a good rule of thumb is to avoid using anecdotal evidence in place of a study, especially personal anecdotes, as tempting as it is. Yeah, I think that covers that one. Unless David, you have anything to add?
No, it's going back to personal anecdotes are like colloquialisms in a way, right? You share. Sounds important, and it certainly may be important to you, but honestly, readers are probably not going to be that interested. Okay. Again, going on a common theme we've talked about, academic writing provides specific terms and in many cases, the definitions of those terms as well for your audience. And of course, you want to cite them like this, right? Okay.
And get them from scholarly sources as well.
Yeah. Okay. And now, a lot of times we generalize, and Molly already said, in the press will say, doctors recommend X. And then if you read the fine print, 5% of the doctors in the study, right? But they'll pull out because what? It sounds more important to say without being specific. So academic writing avoids overgeneralizations, or really generalizations in general. Okay. Everyone loves, or phrases like most people, everyone I know. Right, or my favorite one is they say that, right? Who are they? They say that armadillos are taking over the city. Well, you're right. Who are they there? Okay, so the opposite of that would be, of course, being very explicit in it. And we've already talked about avoiding emotional language in scholarly writing. And of course, using qualifiers is the opposite of using slang expressions. Again, they are totally related, right? Which somebody might say in conversation. So you can see that a lot of what we talk about in academic writing, when we talk about it being formal, right, it avoids the kinds of colloquialisms and slang expressions and contractions that we use all the time in informal speech. But academic writing shies away from them and is specific and as detailed as possible. And then finally, Molly, you want to talk about the difference between where academic writing stands when it comes to stating certainties?
Yeah. So this, I don't know if you disagree with this, dude. I would say this is maybe the most important one, though they're all important. But avoid saying that something has been proven. So, they say that science is self-correcting, which means that it's constantly, we're constantly learning more. Sometimes studies don't replicate, right? So it's constantly updating itself. So we can't say ever that something was definitively proven. So you want to avoid things like, language like proven, instead use things like suggests or provides evidence for. We have support for, so it avoids certainties.
Yeah, and like, okay, there, it just got split up. Somebody maybe put a space in here, but that's okay. Again, do your best if you're navigating this Google Doc not to do anything in the in the Google Doc. We're about to do our first things in the Google Doc. Okay, so now we're going to practice these elements of scholarly academic writing that we've been talking about. So first, we're going to give you a demonstration. So here is an informal paragraph that one might include in a casual essay on a website, maybe in an email. Ever seen those teens nowadays glued to their screens, scrolling away, chasing those likes and follows? Kind of scary, huh? I mean, social media is cool and all, epic memes, cute doggos, and instant updates, but sometimes it feels like a black hole sucking away real connections and self-esteem. FOMO is real. And those picture-perfect snaps, let's be real, not always the full story. We gotta, don't you like that? We gotta remember to take a step back and know that self-worth isn't in likes or retweets. Keep it real out there, kiddos. All right, I hope you can see all kinds of examples of informal language, non-academic language. And then what we've done here is given you a formal paragraph, actually 2 paragraphs, that were used to generate this example. And yes, we used ChatGPT. This is these are real paragraphs, and we said, ChatGPT, we want you to make this story, this brief story, as informal as you possibly can. Fill it with colloquialisms and slang expressions, and this is what it did. And this is what you don't want to do, okay? So we're going down now to the directions, and here's what we want you to do. Pick one of these practice examples. All right, we have 4 of them here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, pick any one of the 4. Copy it. So please don't delete it, but copy it. Or you can set it side by side, because now in your own Google Doc, what we want you to do is to revise this paragraph and make it acceptable for academic writing. And do that in your own Google Doc, and then come below the practice and paste your revision. If you're okay, you have good self-esteem, you're not going to be extra nervous about, exposing your writing. There's lots of ways to say things, so please don't worry about that. But paste your revision then, and then we'll stop when we've got, let's say, 3 revisions of each one of these 4 examples. And you can always come back and look at these later. Molly and I are going to curate them because we don't have time to go through all the revisions, but pick one of the 4, revise it in your own Google Doc, and then where it says paste your revision, click and paste your revision. And now I'll stop talking to give everybody a chance to pick any one of these and revise it, make it more academic. Thank you. Somebody who just pasted their revision of example 1. And let's see, do we have?
I'm still working on it, and it wasn't allowing me to remove it. So I was trying to go into this format of a different page, and so because I wasn't able to, I was just revising it as I was going along.
That's fine.
Please, how do so you will see oh no, sorry, I'll paste it in. Hmm. Let's see, there's a problem here because
Are you looking at the next section, David?
I'm sorry, Molly.
Are you looking at the next section?
Well, okay, there's our demonstration. Okay, so here is this has been reformatted and see,
I keep
it's
seeing roller coasters in the wild, or is that what you're seeing?
well,
Put it in the footer and it's copied on every page now.
Oh, thank you. Was that Louise? Thank you,
yeah.
Louise.
All right. So we're going to have to go in headers and footer.
I
That is quite
downloaded
a
my own
feat.
copy of them. I downloaded my own copy of that, so I'm innocent.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope it wasn't me.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, I I should say David will figure it out.
If you like, I can email you back my download because I might have the version before it got clobbered.
Well,
It looks like you got it,
fortunately,
David, right?
I'm sorry.
It looks like you got it.
All right, let's see. Okay, example, revision. And now, okay, so here's practice example 1. And here comes a revision. Okay, and then this is what I don't know. This one, many cognitive process theories of creativity. I think that's in the wrong place, right? Because
No, that's the no, that's the practice example that it does need editing.
practice example 2. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah.
right.
So
Well, okay.
that's
Well,
the
I'm having
unedited one.
trouble. Oh, there you go. Mine's right there. Okay. All right.
yeah, just work in your own Google Doc if that's okay. If you're having difficulty navigating ours. Okay, well, let me back this up. The practice example for 1 was, hey, besties, so you know how sometimes after a really good coffee, your brain feels supercharged. You're like, man, caffeine is a lifesaver. Just had that feeling, and it got me thinking, what's the actual creds behind that? Like, what if caffeine was like a superhero for our neurons or something? Anyway, I'm no scientist, dude, but if I was, I definitely want to dig into the nitty-gritty of coffee beans and our brain waves. Who's with me? Let's ride the coffee wave together. All right. And the revision of it is salutations, esteemed colleagues. I suppose that takes the place of, hey, besties. Yep. But remember, in scholarly writing, you don't address the you, see? So you wouldn't have that at all. Okay. So we're going to pick it up with, in some instances, individuals may experience a heightened cognitive state after the consumption of a particularly satisfying cup of coffee, leading them to comment on the efficacy of caffeine as a beneficial substance. I recently had a sensation. No, because, yeah. See, this is where, again, we're in scholarly writing, we're trying to avoid I or we. So, and avoiding, remember the personal anecdotes, like I had a sensation. That is fine. Emails, blogs, websites, texts, but not in scholarly writing. And you would not, when you said, what if coffee were to assume the role of superhero? Can you see how that's like a colloquial expression, superheroes? Right? So you would revise that. Now, if we come back up here, okay, like, what if caffeine was like a superhero for our neurons or something, right? Well, the way you would revise that is to say that research indicates that caffeine affects our neurons, right? But you would leave out phrases like superhero because that's really a colloquial. But you could say, what if coffee or the caffeine in coffee enhances the functionality of our neurons? That's fine, okay? Although I lack scientific expertise, again, we're staying away from I, remember, okay? Looking into the complex connection between coffee beans, so you could just leave this phrase out, examining or looking into the complex connection between coffee beans and brain wave activity, right? Instead of intrigues me, intrigues researchers. all right, or many people in the population. So we're leaving ourselves out is what we're doing. Who agrees with my perspective? You know, you would restate that as research. Further research is needed to determine how popular or how widespread this finding is. Okay. All right. Now this, let's see, is this a second one? A second post here? Yeah, the average American coffee consumer drinks about 3 cups of coffee a day. Thank you. You would always put your source. Where is that coming from? Especially with statistics and definitions, but even with opinions if they're not common knowledge. And the fact that Americans consume 3, that is not common knowledge. You may be able to find that in a lot of places, but if you walked up to most Americans, and it's a statistic as well, 3 cups of coffee a day. While many people attribute their energy and positive mood to this caffeinated beverage, the impacts of coffee consumption on the brain and nervous system are not all positive. Again, you would have a citation. You would tell the reader, how do you know that? How do you know the impacts are not all positive? Right? And so you'd have in parentheses a citation. Okay. Now, listen, look like,
I can share my
Molly?
screen for this one, David.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you can just read off mine, right? Or do you want me to stop sharing?
Do you want to stop sharing and I'll,
yeah, not
just
at
so
all.
I can type in there?
Okay.
Great. Okay.
While Professor Hollinger's pulling that up, what if you're the researcher? Like, is it okay to say that, like, our team has concluded, I have observed, or it still has to be in the third person, even if you're the one who, like, came across the findings?
Well, again,
really...
go ahead, Molly.
I would say generally you're still gonna just cite yourself, which like sounds kind of weird. It's like sort of like referring to yourself in the third person. But generally you would just say, a barrel 2014 found, or if you have other authors, you would cite the other authors in general.
Yeah. Or say this study found.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Again, especially when you're not in the conclusion section, there's a little more flexibility there in the conclusions because everybody understands that these are the conclusions of the researcher, but you just try to leave those pronouns out.
Yeah, but that is a kind of a weird thing, like talking about yourself in third person. Okay, so I'll just hit on one example here. I think it was Anonymous Jackalope, so thank you, Anonymous Jackalope, whoever that is. So down here in bold, we have the original that needs editing. So that was, many cognitive process theories of creativity involve a first step of nailing down the problem. Certain research suggested that if you're good at problem identification and construction, you will be more creative. For example, when artists are creating still lives, they have many creative paintings. If they spend, oh wait, sorry, that's not it. Oh, no, that's right. Okay, sorry about that. So spending more time up front leads to more creativity on the back end. However, I believe that more research is needed to ultimately prove that problem finding is the bread and butter of creativity. Okay, so yeah, many theories on cognitive processes of creativity, that part's okay, right? Good specific language involve an initial stage of defining the problem. So this person picked up on that nailing down the problem is pretty casual. So nice job there of changing that to defining the problem, which is a little bit more formal. And then the following studies. So that's good as well. And I would suggest like citation 1, citation. So we'd have, let's say, Hollinger 2014. And if you're using multiple studies, you'd use a semicolon. Have indicated that individuals who excel in identifying and constructing problems tend to exhibit higher levels of creativity. So also a nice job there, talking about individuals, changing the you to third person. Nice work.
That happens to be the one I'll blow myself in, but I pasted a little bit below that, so I don't know if it's appearing there, but you can take a look. There it is. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, she's reading minds right now.
And then, yeah, so higher levels of creativity would be good. It might be even better to say something like higher levels of divergent thinking, just being a little bit more specific. So what are the actual like metrics that they were studying? For instance, yeah, you could change for instance, for example is fine. Artists who dedicate more time to constructing still life paintings often produce more innovative works. Let's see here. So first of all, we would probably want to say like one study which had one study found that artists who dedicate more time to constructing still life paintings often. Okay, so that's good, using a qualifier of often. That's great language to use. More innovative works. I would kind of avoid innovative because it's so there's certainly a difference between creativity and innovation, and it's good to be aware of those differences. So being specific in what I guess adjectives you're using. So typically the study would look at creativity, so creative works, or you might say like even getting into the specificity of like original and
right? I was going to say
useful paintings. Demonstrating that investing time in the initial stages. Yeah, that initial stages could be used. You could even get more specific and go back to using maybe problem finding again, or problem identification. Leads to enhanced creativity in the final outcome. Nevertheless, further research, yeah, nevertheless could work. You could leave it, however, that's fine. Further research is necessary to conclusively establish problem identification as, I guess I wouldn't say the, like a fundamental aspect of creativity. Nice, yeah. So obviously bread and butter of creativity is colloquial. So that was a nice way to rephrase that. So whomever did that one, really, really nice job.
Yeah, thank you.
David, did you want to do another example or move on to mechanics maybe?
Well,
looking at time.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're going to move on, and we'll come back if we have time when we finish. But again, you can see if somebody pasted a revision here, and you have time to go in and even do that later, what we're going to do is go back and look at what people pasted, and then we'll put comments out there that, okay, this is good, or you might want to think, as we've said, there are a lot of different ways of writing in our language. And if you follow our guidelines about avoiding colloquial expressions, slang expressions, keeping yourself out of the writing, where you're avoiding we or I, being as specific as you can. Those are the hallmarks of academic writing. But for the sake of time, we're going to now go to part 2. So if you click on part 2 on the outline, it'll take you right in the Google Doc to, let me share my screen, and it'll take you right in the Google Doc to writing mechanics now. So some of these are connected to what we just did, but they're their own thing also. One of the most common problems in university, college and university writing is the myth that students have that the more words they use, the more educated they're going to sound, you see. And the reality is actually the opposite. Good academic writing is as concise as it can be, because the more words you have, the longer it takes people to read what you've written. And as you know, we all have short attention spans, right? So these are just some examples of simple phrases, very common in spoken English, that you can reduce to single words, right? Instead of, in spite of the fact that, just say although. Instead of in the event that, just say if. So anytime, as long as you're not getting into contractions and slang, that you can replace 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words with one, do it. Because time is a premium for all of us. Now, more than just phrases, though, look at these example sentences. We see these all the time. In my personal opinion, I truly believe that it's absolutely essential for individuals to get a good amount of sleep every single night. Sounds okay in conversation, but look at this much more concise version of exactly the same thing, and you're not eliminating anything. It is essential for individuals to get enough sleep every night. Can you see how simpler that is? And we've also taken the I and the we out, see? I truly believe. You don't need phrases like that. So how about this one? Due to the fact that she's always arriving late for class, she has a tendency to miss the beginning of the lecture. Because she often arrives late, she misses the start of the lecture. Again, so you can look at these to see really good examples, okay, of phrases that you might hear or even say in conversation that you want to revise. You're not throwing out ideas, all right? That's not what it means to be concise. It means to get rid of all those words that you don't need. A lot of them are slang and colloquialisms. A lot of them are emotional, and so forth. So you can see all our examples here, right, of lots of wordy phrases. He possesses a lot of experience. He has extensive experience, right, in the realm of web development and designing websites. Well, that's what web development means. You design websites, so you don't need phrases like well. So hopefully you get the idea here. Always look at your writing. And again, the AI tools are pretty good at that. Submit sentences or paragraphs and say, revise this, you write it, okay? And then submit it and say, okay, revise this to make this, or you can ask these AI bots, could this paragraph or this sentence be more concise and still be academic in nature? So we have lots of examples for you of doing that, right? Molly, you want to talk about sentence structure?
Yeah, so this is pretty similar. So again, gravitating towards the more simple rather than having complex wordy sentences. So for example, instead of despite the fact that there were several studies, each of which pointed towards different conclusions, it remains clear that more research is needed. And you can just compress that down to, although several studies yielded different conclusions, more research is needed. And I'll give you just one more example, because again, I think this is similar to the previous one. In the event that the data set is found to have anomalies, which can often be the case in such situations, a more rigorous review process would be recommended. And just short and sweet, if the data set contains anomalies, a more rigorous review process is recommended.
Yeah. Can you all hopefully see how we've not eliminated any important ideas? We've just reduced lots of words that may be okay in conversation, but in writing, where people are going to have to take the time to read what you've written, you want to be as concise as you can while still not getting rid of ideas. So again, we have lots of examples for you to go through, and you could even practice your own revisions if you want, but we're giving you some examples here before we practice. Okay. The next topic we have can't be any more straightforward. Proofread, proofread, proofread. And now it's so easy because any writing app you're going to use is going to underline stuff, right? That's not spelled correctly. So pay attention to those underlinings. Don't ignore them, because mistakes in your writing like this they're inexcusable, honestly, at the college level, especially at the graduate level. Again, when we have tools, yes, I will admit spelling of lots of English words is not very easy because our language has lots of exceptions. And why it spells things different ways, I'll never be able to tell you, okay? But that's not an excuse. You need to understand and use spell check or use Grammarly, or submit your writing again to an AI tool and tell it, review this paragraph or these 3 paragraphs for correct spelling. All right. All right. So the next section then, Molly, you want to talk about subject-verb agreement errors?
Yeah. So this is just being conscious that your subject and your verbs agree. You know, most of the time spell check will catch this, but sometimes you have to be careful. There are a couple that we've put here highlighted to watch for. So each is always singular. Focus is singular. One that gets me every time is data is plural. So you say data are, which sounds a little weird. But yeah, so just being very aware of that your subject and your verb agree, and making sure that if spell check doesn't catch it, that you're on top of it.
Yeah. English has a lot of what are called collective nouns, right? Data is one of them, because data, you know, the data is, it sounds singular. If I'm in doubt, I just go to Google and I type in, and you can use an AI tool for that. Is this word singular or plural? And it will tell you. And in some cases, you're going to be told, well, it depends on the situation, right? Committee is a good example. Is committee singular or is it plural? All right.
And this can be a good one to have a proofreader for. So, you know, if you have other people in the program, this is a good time to form some good relationships. So you can, you know, swap your writing and, you know, pay each other back. And having a proofreader and an editor is always super helpful.
Always a good idea. Now, some constructions can be confusing too. And one of them is either or neither nor, especially when one half of it is plural and the other half is singular. So look at this sentence. Neither the hypotheses nor the main theory has been tested. In those kind of constructions, the closest thing determines the verb. Well, the closest thing is theory, so that's why here you say has, which is singular. If you flipped it and said neither the main theory nor the hypotheses, you would say have. So it's one of those kind of tricky things. But again, when you're writing academically, you're expected to have a handle on the conventions of the English language. And when you have compound subjects, the closest one determines the verb. In this case, like so. In some cases, you also have to figure out, right? Look at this one. There are several factors that influence the results. I would say several factors influence the result because it's more concise. What does the phrase "there are"? What does that add to the writing? Nothing, right? It adds nothing of consequence. So just revise it to make it, because then it becomes easy to figure out factors influence. The closer you get the subject to the verb, the easier it is to determine subject and verb agreement. And it really gets tricky when you get them separated or split like those other examples. All right. Now, in addition to making sure that all your subjects agree with the verbs, another very common writing error, a place that'll trip you up, is the pronoun and the noun to which it refers, which is also known, right, as the antecedent. Molly, you want to share that example?
Sure. So each student should submit their thesis by the end of the semester, and changing that to each student should submit his or her thesis by the end of the semester. So making sure that student is referring to his or her.
Yeah, and you can see if you keep reading, right, we have some better. My advice, eliminate the awkwardness of the his or her. I have never my entire life liked that phrase. Each student should submit his or her. And especially now, I'm not even sure it's politically correct to use it, okay? Since everybody doesn't identify as a him or a he or a she. Okay, so look at these alternatives, and can you see how they're eliminating the awkwardness, but not the gist of what you're saying? So if you come down to the last one, student theses are due at the end of the semester. Now we've completely avoided the his or her construction. And theses is clearly a plural, and there are no pronouns, right? Theses are. So when in doubt, eliminate the pronoun is my own personal advice, because I just think it gets very awkward to say things like him or her or his. Now, technically, English says that's what you should say, his or her, to be technically correct when you have both genders. But again, I look at these examples and consider. So anytime I have the opportunity to turn singular into plural, that's what I do. Molly, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I guess I have more strong feelings about the the gender, pronouns, and just trying to eliminate that, because it just sounds weird, right? When especially I guess I usually use her just to be a little bit more I don't know, politically sensitive, but I still think it's just easier to sort of avoid that.
Yeah, and you'll find now some writers, his used to be the universal pronoun for a group of students, and that goes to masculine stereotypes that cultures all over the world have observed for centuries, okay? Leaders were always men, that sort of thing. So that's why his used to be the norm. Then, to become more politically correct, we went to his or her. But now I see lots of writers who'll do what Molly just suggested, was pick one or the other. Just be aware that if you pick his, there are going to be some lady readers who are not going to be happy with that. And if you pick her, there are going to be some male readers who go, wait a minute, is she saying all, or is he saying, you know, all the students are one gender? So again, my own personal advice is just get rid of the gender when it's not absolutely essential. See, in this sentence, it doesn't really matter that you're identifying your students as male or female, because the sentence just says, hey, the theses are due. You could have a situation where the gender mattered in your research and you'd want to use him or her or his or her, but. So here are some examples, and you can hopefully see them as ways to make the phrases more neutral, okay? Now, sometimes you get these awkward things, right? If a country wants to progress, they should invest. Who are they in this case, okay? Countries are things. So if a country wants to progress, it should invest. Or better yet, let's make it more concise. Countries that want to progress should invest in education. So like I said, I just, as a rule, unless the pronouns are really needed for meaning, I just get rid of them because it just becomes difficult. All right, we're ready to practice again, hopefully sanely, but let's try it. All right, so we're giving you in these practice demonstrations. Well, the demonstration we have, you can see the demonstration here, and then the revision of it to eliminate any pronoun errors or verb errors. And so what we've done in the revision is we've highlighted where you would need to make a change. Recycling materials play, no, it isn't. Why? And here's the tricky part, right? Recycling is the noun. So the noun determines the verb, not necessarily words that come in between. So that's why it's recycling plays. And you don't even really need the word material unless you started getting more specific. Just say recycling plays an important role, okay? And here, everyone should understand its significance because recycling is a thing. It's a phenomenon, a practice, all right? Again, make sure this is just a made-up citation, but make sure you'd have a citation, okay? Everyone should understand its significance and incorporate it either into his or her daily routine or just delete, right? So how could you say it? Incorporate it into daily routines. Can you see how you don't need a pronoun there? It's understood that it would be these people's daily routines. So everyone should understand its significance, the significance of recycling, and incorporate it into daily routines. Now you don't even need a pronoun, and it doesn't add anything else. We understand that daily routines are individual in nature. So again, don't eliminate meaning, and if your pronouns matter to what you're saying, then leave them in, but if not, my own advice is get rid of them. Okay, so you can see the example, the rest of the demonstration there. The advantages are numerous and individuals have. Individuals sounds like it's singular, but it's not because it's plural. Yeah, that's part of the problem with our language. Words that sound singular, Molly used the example of data before. It just almost sounds funny, doesn't it, to say the data are conclusive, but technically that is correct. Okay, so again, let's pick an example. Please do not delete or move the examples. Go to your own Google Doc, type your revision. We're making sure that all the verbs and all the pronouns are correct because they are very common problems in writing. Okay, and then come here if you would and paste your revision. Now, is that what somebody's done right here? Yeah, okay, very good. Practice example, we already have one, thank you very much. And now we've got a practice example 2, and somebody has pasted their revision. So I love it when people work ahead, Molly. We've got crackerjack students in this thing, right? So we've got, yeah, see, somebody's already gone ahead. Thank you very much. And look at the original and then look at the revision and see if all of the pronoun and all of the agreement issues. Again, really good thing to copy, put it into Chat GPT or Google Bard or Bing and say, please review this paragraph or subject verb agreement or pronoun antecedent agreement. Okay. This is actually 2 paragraphs here, by the way, on the joys and the challenges of pet ownership. So we don't have any revisions of it yet. That is for all the pet lovers out there. Somebody want to give that a shot? We'll give you some time to revise your version of one of these practice.
I wondered, David, if we just want to go over maybe one example so we can get in the APA stuff.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. You want to take the sleep one, or we've got revisions for time management or sleep?
I'll let you choose, David.
Okay. All right. Time management are right. No, time management is crucial. So thank you very much. That is correct. I'm going to highlight where we should. With assignments, research, and teaching duties, a student can easily become overwhelmed if they don't, right? You see the problem? A student is singular. They, this is going to sound weird, they is plural. The word they is plural, okay? So what do we have? Okay, somebody just put it to who, right? The abundance can overwhelm a student who fails to prioritize. Okay, good, because who doesn't distinguish gender. Good job. What else do we have? Let's see. It's not uncommon thinking. Okay. Efficient time management means that a student should allocate their time wisely and prevents last-minute rushes. So allocating time wisely and avoiding last-minute rushes are key components of effective time management. Yay! Somebody want to take credit for this one? Good job. Thank you very much. Yeah, like I said, if you can get rid of the pronouns, do so. But if not, just make sure that they agree with their antecedents. And of course, you always want your subject to agree with the verb. All right. So we've got other practice. You can go in and look at them. But let's go down. We actually have 4 different practices there. All right. For you to go. Oh, sorry. We have all kinds of, our practices, I think, had babies overnight, Molly, because I see more. But anyway, okay. So you've got 5 examples, and you can paste your revision, when we're done, and we'll go back in and we'll look at them. And you don't have to identify yourself. That's okay. And then out to the side, we'll let you know, hey, great job here. Or, you might want to change this. Okay. So we're going down to the organization of the paper. Here, for the organization, you can see the information. We don't have time to practice the organization of a paper, but what we have here are examples. For instance, here's an example title page. Okay. And this is from, we have a whole section on resources, but one of the very best is the Purdue OWL website. OWL is an acronym for Online Writing Lab. It's been around for years. And that's where I always go. If I want to know how to do something in APA, I go there and they have a search bar and I can type in headings or title page or references. Okay. They have lots of examples there as well. So Purdue OWL. Now, if you want to see this bigger, I have already jacked up the viewing to 150% so that you can see it. But if you're on your own version of something, remember how you can just go up there and change the percentage. But this is what the APA recommends for student papers. There are different title formats for different writing. You do dissertation in one way and a thesis in a different way. And so this is the APA recommendation for student paper. And here are all the comments, so you can see these, you can read them. This is key information that APA says. Again, the good thing, check with your professor, right? A lot of professors, as long as you have a title page with key information, I don't think most of the professors in our department, until you get to the thesis or the dissertation, are going to get hung up on that, quite frankly. So see.
Yeah, there's some conventions that Buffalo State follows for the master's project. And I think that's when you'll really have the most like rigid guidelines in terms of how to format a heading.
Yeah. So for those of you, when you get to that level, Dr. Keller Mathers or whoever's teaching the master's, she normally is the one who teaches it. She'll let you know, here's the format we want for all the, and most universities are that way. They have a certain format for master's degree theses and a certain format for doctoral dissertations. But this is a kind of a standard. Again, this is APA recommendation for student title pages. All right. APA has 5 levels of headings. Headings help your reader understand the organization of your paper. And so think of, when you think about what headings to use, my recommendation is outline your paper first. Outline. Here are all the parts of my paper. Everything in the outline you give a Roman numeral to. Make that the highest level of the setting of the heading. Okay, if you have letters on your Roman numeral, then that's level 2 and level 3. So the examples are right here, right? See these levels. Level 1 is centered boldface. Level 2 is flush left but boldface. Text begins on a new paragraph. Level 3, flush left, bold italics. So here are the different levels. There are basically 3 different levels, but APA 7 went to italicized, and if you go to the Purdue site, you can find out when should a heading. I hardly ever require that my students italicize their headings. Okay, so flush left. So typically, and then the next level of heading, the heading is on the same line with the text. So it's indented, it's boldface, it ends in a period. So again, overall advice, outline your paper first, and then use the headings that match your outline. And all the headings ought to be about the same, right? The same concept level, if that's what you're doing. Any other advice with headings, Molly, you want to give our group?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. APA does not use a heading for the introduction. It says first paragraph of a paper is your introduction. We don't need to hit the reader over the head. So we have an introduction, but you don't put the word introduction as a heading. You do, though, use conclusion as a heading. Okay. Now, for creating accessible headings, you can read what's here, but our advice to you is if you want to make a heading accessible, and we do, right, rather than just type words and make them bigger, right, or boldface, if you're in Google, you go up to this styles pane here. So if you look at my headings as example, if I go to Part 3, scholarly paper. This heading, see what it says up here? Heading 1. So you can go into the styles, you can establish what each of these headings looks like. Is it indented? Is it bold-faced? Is it a different color, for instance? And then as you go through your paper, you just highlight the words you want to be a heading, and then come up here and say, make those words heading 1, or make those words heading 2 or heading 3. And Microsoft Word has this, Microsoft Word has exactly the same feature. It's called the Styles pane. So if you go down, let me just go down real quick here, because what I've done here is I've included, follow these directions from Microsoft for your headings if you use Microsoft Word. Or if you use Google, here's directions on how to create your headings, right? So again, rather than just highlight words and make them bigger or bold-face, use the heading styles pane, because all of the readers, that those who have vision impairments, their readers, they need accessibility. And by using these styles panes to determine to fix your headings, those readers are going to know exactly that. Okay, so use those. Okay, no abstracts for short papers. Abstracts are used for dissertations or theses. Unless you have a professor who requires it, short papers do not require an abstract. Footnotes, APA does not use footnotes for references. MLA does, but APA doesn't. And our department, now, remember, for those of you in a different department, you may be using a different style than we use APA, American Psychological Association, but APA does not use footnotes. It uses in-text citations and references. And then here's information on pages. Okay, so you can read that. Every page in APA is numbered, including the title page, including the reference pages. Every page is numbered. And normally it goes in the upper right-hand corner. It goes up in the header, but you can read that. Okay. Now, we're going to get into references now and citations, and we have a little bit of time left for practices. So I think, Molly, if it's okay, what we'll do is let's show them the resources we have in the last section, because I don't want to run out of time for us to at least show you what we have there. And I'm going to let Molly take over, and then we'll come back and play with whatever time we have with some example references and citations. But if we run out of time, we've got guidelines here and then all kinds of examples for you. Okay. So on the outline, scroll down, please, to part 4, resources for locating and curating your writing. Molly?
Do you want to start with the video tutorial?
Well, I'll just point out, if you see it underlined, it's a tutorial. So this is a tutorial on how to access the Buffalo State Library. We created it, so you can click on it and you can watch it, and it will tell you how to log in. See, you can go to the library just going on the internet, but you'll only get so far without logging in. And the library login is a little bit different than email or Brightspace. So watch that tutorial.
Yeah, and so I guess we're sort of transitioning here a little bit into literature review or finding sources. So just keep that in mind. So if you're looking up articles, you can use scholarly databases. And again, you're going to start by going into the Buffalo State Library and then going into databases from there. And a few that we recommend are, there's EBSCO, Academic Search Complete, or PsycInfo is also a good one. And if you scroll down, I think there's some screenshots of what PsycInfo looks like. Then we have Google Scholar. So Google Scholar, I think, is most useful, in my opinion, for finding research by, if you have a scholar who you're pretty confident in, if you want to find a lot of their work. Granted, this is like self-curated, so people post their own work on Google Scholar, so I wouldn't necessarily type in the search bar Google Scholar like a keyword like divergent thinking or something, because it's not vetted like if you go into a journal. But if you have like a researcher that you're pretty confident in and want to find a body of their work, that can be a good place to go. And that's the same thing with ResearchGate, I would say is pretty similar. David, anything to add about Google Scholar?
No, I for the reason you mentioned, I will go there sometimes and get references, but normally I use these scholarly databases, and then I use these other scholarly sources like JSTOR and Semantic Scholar, ResearchGate.
Dr. Gates,
Okay,
this is
nice.
Ardrina. Do we have access to JSTOR?
Yes, you do.
Okay, wonderful. Thank
Yep. And when you go to JSTOR, there's a section of it that, because JSTOR will give you open source resources, but then it catalogs resources that are behind Buffalo State's firewall or whatever the institution is. But it's kind of cool because you can go there and you can log in. It'll say you want to log in through your institutions, and you could put Buffalo State, and you could put your Buffalo State login. Like I said, you want to look at this tutorial because that login is your username without the @ part is what the login for the library is. So mine is Yates WD. That's my library login, not at buffalostate.edu. Okay, so anyway, yeah, you all have access. Same thing with Semantic Scholar, another great source for searching, and it'll search for public stuff and stuff behind firewalls. Molly, you've used ResearchGate, right?
Yeah, I have a ResearchGate. Granted, I need to update it. But yeah, it actually like self-populates a lot of times. So again, I would say that's kind of similar to Google Scholar in that if you have a researcher that you want to see more of their work, but again, it's like self-curated. So just be aware of that.
Yeah. Now, it becomes very important that you come up with an organizational method to save your sources. All right. I can't stress enough, as you do more and more research, it gets overwhelming to have all these sources that you may want to use again. So that is what these two apps are. They're both free. One's called Zotero, one's called Mendeley. And one of the cool things about both of them is that there are desktop apps, but you can also access them from phones. They're cloud-based, so you can access them from phones and iPads and things. So what we've included is, here's the link to the website, but then here's a really good tutorial on how to use it. But whether you use Zotero or Mendeley or create your own spreadsheet to start saving all of your references, work on a method that works for you. Okay, but save them.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm just laughing here because I'm a little bit old school. I haven't really caught up to date David on this front, but I've just never found a citation software that I've loved. So I just have done, a DIY spreadsheet, and that's what works for me. So yeah, as David said, just figure out what works for you. And if one of these more structured softwares works for you, that's great.
yeah. Don't store all of your references in just one place. Now, see, that's what I like. Now, Molly can easily take her spreadsheet and back it up, put it on OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox or some other place, or old school flash drive, right? I don't even know if I've got any more of those. But The thing I like about Zotero and Mendeley and Citation Machine, although Citation Machine costs $10 a month, is that they're cloud-based. And like I said, they're accessible from different devices. So I don't worry that I'm going to lose my references, right? And you can organize them into folders and you can search for them. So check these out, but work out a method to store your references. And also, when you put the whole reference in, they'll generate the citation format, right? For putting a citation in the body. We don't have time tonight to go. I've included here the most popular AI tools that I use for scholarly writing. I mostly use ChatGPT and Elicit. So I recommend these all have either free or trial versions. Now with ChatGPT, I pay the $20 a month for what's called ChatGPT Plus or ChatGPT 4 because it has a plugin for going live to the internet, whereas ChatGPT itself is now 2 years old. Eventually it'll be updated, but right now the data in it is 2 years old, and you cannot use it to search the internet live. It's not a search engine. It's a big repository of huge amounts of data that they fed it through the end of 2021. So I paid the $20 a month because boy, do I use it a lot. And later this month, well, not quite this month, in November, I think it's the 16th. There's actually a mini C, creativity expert exchange on using the AI tools. But then also, I'm making a presentation,
which you are doing, David, by the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And then that at night, these honestly, they are quite remarkable. They are a great tool. But if you use them wisely, and again, I recommend, try to come. Now, if I'm trying to look around here. I was looking around for somebody in my current 670 course because I'm actually, Krista, I'm actually training 670 students this Friday in class on how to use ChatGPT creatively. But anyway, Elicit is a great resource for searching all kinds of, and you get, it'll do a spreadsheet, it'll generate the citations and the abstracts and so forth. So here are the really good ones. Most of them are free, but with ChatGPT, I do recommend, I just get a lot of good results with it. And for my own sanity, it's worth $20. It's worth $20 a month. That's like a pizza. Pay about $20 for a pizza. So for my sanity, I'll trade one pizza for ChatGPT because, like I said, the paid version has all these plugins. There's a travel plugin, and there's all kinds of things there. Okay, then we've got all these other resources here for you. Okay.
Yeah, just a little tip with that APA website. So I just stuck a screenshot in there because if you Google an article, and then the APA website comes up, APA SciCnet, oftentimes they'll have the correct citation in there, which is really handy because you can just copy and paste it. So that's just a little tip that I've learned over the years.
Yeah, a lot of those sources like JSTOR and ResearchGate, a lot of them now look carefully because they'll give you the citation right there. That's become so common. They'll give you the full reference. What you have to be careful, though, is to choose the style, right? Because like I said, a lot of them you're going to say you have to click on a button for MLA versus APA. They're the two most popular ones. So if for Buff State creativity courses, like we said, we use APA. So we've got, this is a really good guide. I've got the, what did I do with it? Here it is right here. I love this little thing. It's got spiral. It's hard to, with my virtual background, it's this book that's on the screen, except this one's called Pocket Style Manual And it's just real easy, real quick to find stuff in there. All
Yeah.
kinds of
So
examples.
that's the Bible of APA. What's kind of annoying is they update it like every couple years because I think it's a big moneymaker for them. So yeah, oftentimes you have to get a new one, but I would recommend getting it. I use it all the time.
Yeah. And like we said, this is the go-to source. You just go to Google and you type in APA format. My guess is it's going to come back with 10 million hits. The first hit is the Purdue Owl website because it is so popular and has been for a long time. Okay. So we've got all these references for you again that we don't have time to go through, but we wanted to share them with you. And remember, you will retain your access to this Google Doc. We will continue to add to it, right? So it can be a good reference source for you. And then, Molly, what's our best overall advice if you want to become a better writer?
Read. Yeah. So right. So the more articles you read, I said, we're trying to be deliberate about practice and, introduce you to these concepts in a structured way. But at the same time, you do pick up things by simply reading. And the more articles you read, you'll notice the patterns, right? And you do pick them up that way. So it's a balance.
Yeah. And we've included some really good writing resources here for you, especially about not just the right format, but how do you analyze a scholarly paper? As you know, that's just as important, maybe more so, than how do I format one? The language can be difficult and hard to follow. And so that's what all these guides are that we're sharing with you. Okay. We have just a couple minutes, so we go ahead.
This is Ardrina.
Ardrina?
Dr. Yates, is there any possibility of sitting in your class on Friday?
Sure. If you'll email me, I'll send you the link to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What time is that class?
5:00 Eastern time. I have to think for a minute. I'm in Idaho now. My brain is all fried.
Thank you.
It's 5:00 Eastern. Yes, and you are certainly welcome to come, but also look out for the mini-C coming up. And all right, so I'm going back up because we have a whole section on citations and references. We are not going to have time to practice those, but again, we want to stress a couple things to you. In APA, in scholarly writing, every time you state an opinion outside of the conclusions part of your paper, every time you state an opinion or a fact, you need to tell the reader where did it come from, what website, what book, what article. So we've given you some good examples here. Also, if you go to the Purdue Owl website, how do I format a website that has no author, or a website that has no date, or let's say the proceedings of a conference is very popular. That's where you want to go. But we've got lots of really good examples here for you. And we show you, right, here's an author. And then here is the in-text citation, because the reference page goes at the end of your paper, but within the paper, that's where you put a citation. Now, most citations are pretty simple. Author and year. But they can get complicated if there is no author or there is no date. So you want to understand from our examples, just keep going down. All right, here's example chapter in an edited book. All right, a lot of books are edited. A lot of books have editors with a bunch of different chapters, like the Molly, haven't you contributed to the Encyclopedia of Creativity? Or are you working on that now?
No, this one here I put is from a handbook of creativity and emotions. So like the Cambridge handbooks, the Oxford handbooks, Routledge has handbooks. There are a lot. And it's just good to be aware that if you're, citing a specific chapter in there, that you have to put the chapter as well as the book.
Yeah. So again, we've got examples, but our recommendation and there are even more here. Here's several example websites, right? What if you're citing the whole website, you don't even put it on the reference page. APA says put the website in the body of your paper, but then you don't list the entire, if in this case, right, it says the website provides useful information. So you could do that, and you list the website right in the body, but you don't put it in the reference page. Kind of weird in a way. But now when you get information from parts of a website, look at these examples that we're giving you, because some of them have an author. Sometimes understand the author is an organization. It's not a person, right? The American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, that is the author of this website. But it doesn't sound like an author, but that's who maintains the website. A lot of organizations have websites, so you consider them to be the author. Normally you include the year, but if it doesn't have a year, then you put N period D period. So your reader knows you didn't leave it out. There is no year on that website. Some website, more and more websites now include a date, but there are still some that don't, right? Now, what have you seen this retrieve from? Have you seen that sometimes in references? Retrieved on a date? APA says if you think the information on the website is likely to move, right, then that's when you put in the retrieve. But I know people who just put that for every website reference. It's not going to hurt to do that, right? Here's the date on the website itself, but here's when I got it. And I just put retrieve from. So you're not going to hurt anything by doing that. And again, if there is no date, then for this part, you would put ND. In other words, no date on the website, because you had to retrieve it on a day. And that you can at least put the date that you retrieved it. Okay. So again, you've got all kinds of examples here that you can see. All right. Just make sure. Whoops, I went too far there. All right. Let me stop sharing because we're 2 minutes over. Our apologies for going over, but
that wasn't my fault, David. That was
I'm sorry.
You were the last one who spoke.
Not your fault.
the royal we.
That's right. That's right. The royal we. That's correct. Okay. We do want to stop. If you need to leave, go right ahead. If you have questions, we will try to answer them. Although, Molly, I'm not going to insist that you stick around because you're in the middle of the night. Molly is in Spain right now. So 5 hours.
Yeah, so now I can sympathize with my 610 students who are, in class at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Bienvenido.
But no, I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes and answer some questions.
Yeah. Again, you're going to continue to have access to this Google Doc. Please use it. But
I have a weird one.
A weird question? I'm not surprised, Joe.
Yes. So when I'm in my Google Doc and I put in the body setting, right, for the text, it happens to be Arial 11, right? 11-point Arial. So is that a standard font or the proper standard font for an APA?
No, okay. APA wants 12-point Times New Roman.
Gotcha.
So you have to go into the settings in Google and tell it for my body text, I want 12-point Times New Roman.
I'm on my way. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. That's just standard. That's what the practice has been for years. Any other questions that we can? Good question, though. Thank you for asking. And again, if you're using Microsoft Word, do the same thing. Go into styles, go into the body text, and tell it you want 12-point Times New Roman.
Okay, so I see something in the chat.
There's a question in the chat.
All right, Wally, you want to read that?
Yeah, so can you please explain how and when to cite an author who cited multiple authors in one citation? not sure I'm understanding that.
When some researchers piece, say if they're, you know what I'm talking about, Dr. Yates? They're
Yeah.
piecing different phrases together from multiple sources.
Okay,
I
so
see
you're
that a
looking
lot.
at you're looking at an article that's maybe saying like, you know, creativity is trainable, and then it cites like 4 different articles. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So, ooh, that's a good one.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so first of all, it can be considered plagiarism to just like copy and paste their sort of string of citations into your own paper. So I would not take, like, let's say they have like 4 references for that. I wouldn't take just those 4 and put those into yours. But this is a good example, we didn't get to it, of citing secondary sources. So the best practice in that case is to, and you know, David, you can weigh in on this, but what I would recommend is you look at the articles that they are citing, because you don't want to just assume in any point at that they're you know, that like there is, you know, a little bit of human error sometimes in these articles. So you do want to like do your homework and go to those original citations and make sure that they're supporting whatever claim that they have in that article. So you really want to go back to the original source rather than citing the article that cites the other articles. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Will you have an example of, can you put an example of that in the document that you all
We
created?
sure can.
Okay,
I
because
know
by
we
the time
talked
I go to
about.
sleep, I'll forget.
Okay. All right, Mona, let's make a note to add. Yeah, because
So
I know.
can I say um William Yates citing Molly at, you know, so on and so on? Am I safe when I do that?
Yes.
So let's say you're looking at an article by Yates, and Yates in that article he says you know, creativity training leads to better creative output, and then he cites Puccio, Hollinger, etc. You don't want to cite Yates. You want to go back, you want to go to Puccio, you want to go to
Okay.
Hollinger, and you want to put those original sources into, that's who you want to cite. But you want to double check that those citations are solid. You don't want to just assume, because sometimes people stretch it a bit. So
Okay.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
work, but
Okay.
it's the safest bet.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I always had that question of how they even put all
That's
of
a
that.
really
Because
right.
they're synchronizing all of this conversation.
Yeah, because
They're having them talk to each other, and that's common.
and
But I just wonder, because when I'm an English teacher, and I just wonder when you cite everything. I mean, because there's so much you have to cite. To me, it just looks wrong. It's like, you know, and I am just used to, I guess, infusing or having my students infuse themselves in these conversations. You know, you're having a conversation, and you're supposed to be engaging with the artist, with the authors. And so when I have to cite every other line, because it's not my wording, it's their wording, to me that looks like it's just the ultimate type of plagiarism, but I guess it's not if that's academic writing.
It's the opposite of plagiarism. Is you just put all that in there and you don't give anybody credit.
Right.
You don't
Right.
cite.
Well,
That's what plagiarism is.
so why wouldn't I give Yates the credit when he was the first article that I read this information in? And I mean, I know I need to go back to but I'm still not giving Yates the credit for bringing
well,
that to my attention.
So another way you can think about it is who did the research. So Yates didn't do the research. He just has, in his introduction, this is, I'm introducing this concept. And so you can think who's the actual person doing the research. That's who you want to cite.
Yeah.
Okay, I
And
got it.
Yates is crazy, and maybe he read that wrong. Really, when you go back to the original, you go, wait a minute, did he read the same thing I did? Because so that's the reason you try to go, as Molly's pointing out, go back to the sources.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you.
So
Dr.
It's important. That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else with
I have a question.
let's see, that sounds like
You
Ulrich.
run into where you see like Teresa Amabile. She must be in everybody's book. Do I then go to everybody's book to find her, to cite her rather than citing the people who cites her?
That's right.
Wow.
I mean, if they cite her, you need to go and try to find that article. Hopefully they will include the reference so you can go to that original piece, because they may not be representing Teresa Amabile correctly. Right? And so that's what you do. Now, Kia said, okay, I should give him credit. No, if it's my thought, I want credit for it, right? If I say, I conducted a study and here's what I found, okay, then I want you to cite me. But if I'm citing somebody else, like Molly said, they're the people who deserve the credit that should go into your paper, not me. Just because I cued you in that, hey, you ought to do this. Okay, that's nice, but still, I could have misrepresented. And sadly enough, it will happen. People will stretch, even in academic writing. Sometimes, this is very sad, sometimes academic studies are paid for by people,
Right.
organizations, and companies, okay?
Right.
That's right. And so when you pay for it, it doesn't mean that academic writing is inherently dishonest. It just means that, Mark Twain said is it two different kinds of statistics? There's lies and there's damn lies, or whatever the phrase.
Damn lies, and there's statistics.
And then there's statistics. That's right. Okay. Because you can take, I used to tell my students, Babe Ruth is synonymous with excellence in the sport of baseball. Okay. Babe Ruth failed 66% of the time. Now, I could cite that. I could say this man was a miserable failure. What occupation in the world would pay you to fail 66% of the time? Well, guess what? In baseball, a 340 lifetime batting average it's Hall of Fame territory. So you can take statistics and you can take studies, and you can, I think the phrase, Molly, have you heard that? Torture the statistics enough, right? And they'll say whatever you want them to say.
Oh gosh, that kills me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Let's end that topic.
How do we have your contact information, Miss Molly, if we have any further questions?
I will put my email in the chat. Yeah.
Can I put it on the Google Doc, Molly?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I
okay
can put
with
them in
that?
the Google Doc too.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right. So I'll go there right now.
And please don't forget my question.
Secondary source. Got it.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hick. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. This has been so helpful, you guys. Thank you.
Good night.
You are welcome.
Thank you, Molly.
Good night.